guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very exciting announcement. Exciting and nerve-wracking. I feel so simultaneously nervous and excited for what I'm about to share with you that I just need to get it over and done with. So as I'm sure some of you are already aware because I've mentioned it frequently, I have started a podcast. And today is the day that the podcast officially launches. So there is a trailer that has been up for about a week now that I shared on Twitter but haven't shared on my channel. But as of this morning, Monday the 28th of May, 2 full episodes of the first season of the podcast have gone live. I thought I'd launch it in style with lots of content for you to enjoy and get an idea of what to expect from the future episodes of the podcast. But where do I start with all the details? So the podcast is called That's Ancient History. I will insert the logo here, which I designed with the help of my wonderful mum together, and I'm so proud of what we came up with. I love the logo. It was something I spent a lot of time thinking about. If you're not familiar, it's meant to be the top of a Greek amphora, which is a type of ancient Greek vase. Been a sort of stylistic design, and I'm just really pleased with how it all worked out. The colours were meant to kind of represent the colours of red figure vases or pottery from, again, ancient Greece, just because I thought it'd be nice to have those little layers of meaning behind it, and I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks so cool in the app, which is so strange to see. If you go on iTunes or the podcast app on Apple, you can see it if you search for it, and it's my little logo right there for the podcast, and I think that's such a weird thing to see. I don't know why, because I've been doing YouTube for such a long time, but this feels quite different. And it's very exciting to be starting something new. And if you can't tell from the title of the podcast does deal with antiquity. It deals with everything from the ancient history of Greece and Rome, although I'd definitely be willing to expand beyond that depending on who I can get to interview. It also deals with classical mythology and classical receptions, so it will deal with sort of modern reinterpretations of ancient history or classical mythology, and even kind of the way classics exists today, so perhaps in schools or modern projects that are using antiquity and classics as part of their research. The world is our oyster. What I really just want to accomplish with this podcast is to not only give people a place to come and learn about antiquity at hopefully what is an accessible level. You don't need to have done a classics degree to listen to this podcast, but also to explore the degree to which classics and antiquity is still all around us to today, how it creeps into every layer of society and culture, even pop culture, and share that with you because that's why I love it. I think it's a fascinating topic that still has resonance today, and I feel like once you start noticing mythology or classics in your everyday life, say in architecture or modern literature or on your TV screens, you can't stop noticing it. So I'm hoping to infect you with that bug, essentially. The podcast will be going up in seasons, and each episode will be going up fortnightly. So like I mentioned, this week we've got 2 full episodes that you can listen to, and then the following episode will go up a fortnight from today, which will be the 11th of June, and so on and so forth. But I can tell you what some of those episodes are already for some of you that may be interested. The first 2 episodes that you can already go and listen to include an episode called Where to Begin Getting into Classics with my friend Harriet Scott. We went to university together at Edinburgh and did our undergrads together, so we both studied in the classics department at Edinburgh University, and Harriet has since gone on to work in charities, so a very different career path from mine, but we both share a passion for this subject, and we talked a little bit about how we got into classics because neither of us studied it in school prior to going to university. We both went to comprehensive state schools in Scotland where classics is not commonly taught, or Greek or Latin or even ancient history in your history classes. So we discovered our passion or interest in classics outside of school, and I wanted to have that discussion in the hopes of making it all a bit more accessible to you and making you feel as if this is a subject area that you can learn about too. It is not exclusive to anybody, and perhaps point you in the direction of a few places that you might want to start. The second episode, perhaps continuing with that theme, is actually an interview with Madeline Miller. And if you've been watching my videos recently, you probably are aware that Madeline Miller's latest novel, Circe, is my favourite book of the year so far. I adored it. It is a retelling of the Greek myth of Circe, who was a Greek goddess and sorceress. But if you want to know more about her, and also the process of writing a myth retelling, what's involved in that, how you pick up on themes from antiquity that resonate today, how you balance making something suitable for a contemporary audience and working with the original source material, as well as a little bit more about Madeline Miller's own passion for classics and how she got into classical literature, then I would highly recommend listening to that episode. It was such a lovely experience interviewing her. She is such a nice person, such a fascinating person, and I loved listening to her answers, so I hope you will as well. So that episode is all about retelling classical myths. We will then, in a fortnight from now, be having an episode all about combat trauma in ancient Greece, starring again my friend Stan Christoforou, who is a fellow PhD student of mine at the University of Roehampton, researching combat trauma in ancient Greece. And this topic hadn't even crossed my mind before I met Stan and he talked about it, and I just thought it was so fascinating that I had to interview him and ask about this subject and ask him to introduce us to this topic, and I think he gave some really fascinating answers. I loved hearing about it. I want to know more. It's made me think about my own research in a new way, because his thesis very much does require going beyond the classics discipline and looking at methodologies used by psychologists to look at antiquity, and it's very fascinating talking about that sort of interdisciplinary stuff and how you use modern academic disciplines to look at an ancient time, and also just what it was like to be a part of Greek warfare. So again, super interesting. I love the topic, so I hope you do too. We will also be having every season at least one episode that is just myself, so I will not be having a guest on, and these will be myth digests. So in these episodes I will be taking an ancient myth, telling you the story of that ancient myth, talking about the way it changed over the years in different genres, perhaps over the Greek and Roman periods, what it meant to ancient people, and even a little bit about its receptions in literature beyond the ancient period. So you can look forward to a myth digest all about Procne and Philomela, which is actually one of the myths that is central to my PhD thesis. So it's a myth I have done a lot of research on, and hopefully some of that has come through in this episode. And that episode hopefully provides an introduction to that myth. You definitely don't need to know anything about it before going into it. I introduce it in full, but also goes a little bit deeper into analysing it and what it meant to the ancient people. There will also be an episode coming up all about fantasy fiction and mythology. My friend Jill Scott and I, who again did our undergrads together at the University of Edinburgh, talk all about some popular fantasy series and the way in which they incorporate mythology into their stories and perhaps adapt ancient mythology in those stories, where they've maybe taken influence or inspiration, whether consciously or unconsciously, and we compare the fantasy stories and the characters and the names in those stories to their ancient equivalents and draw parallels. And unlike the Greek myth retellings, this isn't fiction that intentionally are retellings of ancient myths. These are just popular fantasy and even a little bit of sci-fi, where they just seem to have been influenced by classics, and I really enjoyed that because Jill is a massive Lord of the Rings fan and knows a lot more about Middle-earth than I do, so she was able to talk about that, and then we talked a little bit more about some other series that I won't spoil for you. We will also have an episode each season where I get somebody on who doesn't know anything about classics to quiz me. These will be called Ask a Classicist, and my guests will be able to just ask any random questions that they have about antiquity, and hopefully I will be able to answer them. And I might even do a Twitter special at some point where you guys can give me your questions on Twitter and I can do one of those, but those will be slightly shorter mini-sodes that will kind of wrap up the season before taking a little bit of a break. But there will also be lots of other exciting episodes to come. I have hopefully some other interviews in the works I might be able to get to soon, and share with you, both with authors, friends and academics in different fields that I'm hoping to pick the brains of. So hopefully you're excited for all of that. If you do have any requests of topics you'd like covered, myths, guests you'd like to see, then do leave them here or tweet me at That's Ancient. We do have a Twitter account which, like I've just mentioned, is called That's Ancient because That's Ancient History is too long for a Twitter handle, but no matter. Obviously, if you want to stay up to date with the podcast, the best way to do that is to follow me on Twitter, which is also an excellent way to communicate with the podcast. So you can subscribe to it on SoundCloud, which is the website I'm using to host the podcast, and you can also subscribe to it on iTunes or the podcast app, where you can download it and listen to it whenever you want, on your commute to work, when you're cleaning your house, whenever you listen to podcasts, and hopefully you will discover some new and interesting topics from it. I have been working on this project for what feels like an inordinate amount of time, and I can't believe you guys can actually listen to it now. Obviously, I'm sure there's much growing and work I'll need to do as a podcaster. This is a medium I am somewhat new to, so please be slightly forgiving for any little mistakes in the beginning. I will hopefully get better as it goes on, although I am very proud of what I have achieved, because I think it's good to be proud of yourself, and I just love talking about classics and ancient history, so it's exciting to have a new place that is dedicated to that topic, and that I can get other people on to talk about their areas as well and really explore it all. It's just so exciting to me that I'm going to be doing that, and I'm hoping you're as excited too. Obviously, if you listen to the episodes and enjoy them, please do rate and leave a review on the podcast app, because that makes a big difference to me, and the podcast is a massive help, so that would be amazing. And if you would like to give any sort of small monetary support to the podcast, given that it does take a lot of time, energy and actual financial support from me to run the podcast, you can of course donate to my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/bookish thoughts, and that is a Patreon page both for my YouTube channel and for my podcast. It's just for all of the online work I do, and it just gives me that little bit of assistance in dedicating time to all of those projects. Obviously, if you don't have any money to donate, that is absolutely fine. No pressure, but if you have a spare dollar or two and you want to donate on Patreon to support the podcast, then that would be amazing. There are different reward tiers on there that you can sign up to and get different things from my Patreon, and if you have any other suggestions for reward tiers, I'm always open to them, but I'll let you look at them yourself. But I thought I would flag that up. If you have any other questions about the podcast, just leave them on this video. I feel like I'm just so excited and my brain's a bit of a tizzy that I don't know what else I need to say, what's important points. I've probably missed off something really, really important, but hopefully some of that information you can get from actually looking at That's Ancient online. I'm so excited for your feedback. I hope you all enjoy it. I'm so excited to keep recording future episodes. Yeah, and I just hope some of you are as excited as I am. But without further ado, go listen, download, enjoy, and I will see you all again soon. Bye!